Commander Elias Grant stared at the transmission on his screen, reading it for the third time. The words blinked in a deep red hue, the official color of the Zurich Hive, one of the most mysterious empires in the galaxy. To the leaders of the Terran Federation, the Supreme Matriarch, Queen Vecteri of the Zurich Hive, extends a formal invitation to a human ambassador. We seek to learn more about your species. The Queen has a particular question that only a human can answer. Arrival coordinates attached. A response is required within 48 hours. Grant exhaled slowly, tapping his fingers on the desk. The Zurich rarely interacted with outsiders. They were an insectoid species, highly intelligent, fiercely territorial, and completely uninterested in galactic politics. No human had ever set foot on their home world. And now, out of nowhere, their queen wanted to meet one. The mission briefing was clear. Go to Zurich Prime, represent humanity, and find out what this was all about. A deep voice interrupted his thoughts. Commander, the Zurich shuttle has arrived. Grant turned to see Lieutenant Harper, his second in command, standing at the doorway of his cabin aboard the diplomatic cruiser Ulysses. She looked just as puzzled as he felt. They didn't send an escort fleet? Grant asked. Harper shook her head. Nope, just one ship. Looks strange. Grant followed her to the viewing deck. Outside, the Zurich vessel hovered in space, its organic hull pulsing slightly like a living thing. Its surface shimmered with bioluminescent patterns, shifting from deep blue to a warm amber. That thing's alive, Harper muttered. Most of their technology is. Grant adjusted his uniform, a crisp dark blue suit with the Terran Federation insignia on the chest. All right, time to meet our hosts. The landing. The Zurich shuttle was unlike anything Grant had seen before. The interior was dark, humid, and smelled faintly of something sweet, almost like honey. The walls pulsed gently, responding to his movement as he stepped inside. A Zurich attendant, tall and covered in dark kitten, gestured for him to sit on an organic-looking seat. The Queen waits, the attendant clicked in a rhythmic voice. Its mandibles twitched, and Grant noted that it wore a shimmering metallic sash, likely a rank symbol. The shuttle lifted off without a sound. Within minutes, they entered the atmosphere of Zurich Prime. Below, massive hive structures stretched across the landscape like towering beehives, glowing with bioluminescence. Grant had been to many alien worlds, but this was something else. The entire planet looked alive. As they descended toward the largest structure, his heart pounded. What did the Queen want? Why now? The Queen's chamber. The shuttle landed smoothly inside the royal hive. The moment the doors opened, a wave of warm, scented air hit Grant's face. It smelled floral, almost intoxicating. He kept his expression neutral as he stepped onto the smooth, polished floor of the Queen's chamber. Rows of Zurich nobles lined the walls, their carapaces gleaming under the dim golden lights. They watched him in absolute silence. At the center of the chamber sat Queen Vecteri. She was larger than any other Zurich in the room, her exoskeleton shimmering with a deep violet hue. Her 6 glowing eyes studied him with intense curiosity. A crown-like crest extended from her head, pulsing with faint golden light. When she finally spoke, her voice was smooth, almost melodic. So, a human stands before me at last. Grant gave a respectful nod. I am Commander Elias Grant of the Terran Federation. It is an honor, Your Majesty. Vecteri leaned forward slightly. I have studied your people, your ways, your history. You are fascinating. Grant kept his posture straight. I'm here to answer your questions, Your Majesty. What would you like to know? The Queen's eyes locked onto his, and for a moment, the chamber fell completely silent. Then, in a calm, deliberate tone, she asked, I wonder, what is it like to mate with humans? Commander Elias Grant stood frozen for a moment, his diplomatic training struggling to catch up with what he had just heard. I wonder, What is it like to mate with humans? The words echoed in his mind. Around him, the Zurek nobles watched with unblinking, glowing eyes. Their antennae twitched slightly, sensing his reaction. Grant took a steady breath, forcing himself to stay calm. This had to be a misunderstanding. He gave a polite nod. Your Majesty, could you clarify what you mean by mate? Queen Vecteri's crest pulsed with golden light. Your kind reproduces differently from ours. I wish to understand this process. How do humans exchange their genetic code? How does your species evolve? Grant exhaled slowly. So it wasn't some strange personal request. This was scientific curiosity. He relaxed slightly. Our reproduction is biological, he explained carefully. A male and a female contribute genetic material to create offspring. It is a complex process. Vecteri tilted her head. And yet your species has adapted to so many environments. You have shaped entire worlds, built machines that surpass nature itself. There must be more to it. Grant considered his words. It is not just our biology, Your Majesty. It is our minds, our culture, our drive to improve. We learn, we adapt, we innovate. Vecteri let out a deep rhythmic hum. Fascinating. Suddenly, one of the Zurek nobles stepped forward. His exoskeleton was dark blue, and his voice clicked sharply. Your Majesty, this is unnecessary, he said. Humans are dangerous. They consume resources at an alarming rate. They should not be trusted with the secrets of our hive. Grant turned toward the noble, keeping his expression neutral. So, not all Zurek were happy about this meeting. Vecteri, however, remained calm. Minister Kozor, I decide what is necessary. The human is our guest. Kezor's mandibles twitched, but he stepped back, bowing slightly. The Queen's eyes returned to Grant. Commander, I have a proposal. Grant straightened. I am listening, Your Majesty. Vecteri's crest pulsed again. I do not wish for simple words. I wish for an exchange, a deeper understanding. Grant frowned slightly. What kind of exchange? She gestured to a shimmering pod beside her throne. It glowed with soft blue light. This is a neural exchange chamber, she said. A method of sharing knowledge between species. No harm will come to you. But for a brief moment, I will experience the thoughts and instincts of a human, and you will experience the mind of a Zurek queen. Grant's breath caught. This was much bigger than a simple conversation. If we do this, he said carefully, what exactly will I feel? Vecteri's mandibles twitched in amusement. You will understand my kind as no human ever has. You will see our memories, feel our instincts, and know our unity. And I will see the world as you do. Grant hesitated. This was a huge risk. If the Zurek learned too much about humanity's weaknesses, it could be dangerous. But at the same time, this was an opportunity. If he agreed, he could learn secrets about the Zurek that no outsider had ever known. He glanced at the watching nobles. Some looked curious, others suspicious. This exchange could change everything. After a long pause, he made his decision. I accept. A ripple of surprise spread through the nobles. Even Kozor's eyes widened slightly. Vecteri let out a pleased hum, then stepped forward. Commander Grant. Grant moved toward the neural exchange chamber, his heart pounding. As he placed his hand on the glowing surface, the world around him began to blur. To be continued. Next part preview. Grant enters the neural exchange and experiences the mind of the Zurek queen. But what he discovers is far more than he expected, and far more dangerous. Commander Elias Grant took a deep breath as he placed his hand on the glowing surface of the neural exchange chamber. The energy pulsed beneath his fingertips, warm and almost alive. Queen Vecteri watched him closely, her 6 luminous eyes filled with curiosity. Around them, the Zurek nobles stood in tense silence, unsure whether this exchange would be a great success or a terrible mistake. Too late to back out now, Grant thought. The chamber hummed softly. Then, suddenly, everything changed. A mind not his own. Grant felt a strange pulling sensation, as if his consciousness was being stretched beyond its limits. His vision blurred, then exploded into a cascade of colors he had never seen before. For a brief moment, he was no longer himself. He was everywhere. He could feel thousands of minds. Jurek workers, soldiers, scholars, all connected in perfect harmony. Their thoughts were not separate. They flowed like a river, each individual adding to the greater whole. He felt hunger, but not for food. Hunger for knowledge, for expansion, for survival. He saw the history of the Jurek hive, not in words, but in emotions and instincts. He felt what it was like to be born from the hive, to be raised with thousands of siblings, to never feel loneliness. The Jurek were not individuals the way humans were. They were a single, living entity spread across countless bodies. And at the center of it all, Vecteri. Grant felt her presence, vast and ancient, her mind extending across the entire hive like an unseen web. She was the hive. He could feel her curiosity, her fascination with humans. She did not see them as simple creatures. She saw them as something unpredictable, something dangerous, something different. Suddenly, Grant felt her searching. She was inside his mind now, seeing the world through his thoughts. The Queen's discovery. For the first time, Vecteri experienced individuality. She felt the weight of a single mind, alone in the vastness of the universe. No shared thoughts, no comforting presence of thousands of others, just herself. She saw Grant's memories, his childhood on Earth, the bright blue sky, the laughter of his younger sister, the scent of rain after a storm, his training as a diplomat, the endless debates, the tension of negotiations, the way humans used words as weapons. His first battle. The cold, empty silence of space after a battle gone wrong. The loss of friends. The terrible knowledge that every decision carried consequences. Vecteri had never known loss before. The hive never lost anyone. They simply continued. But humans carried their dead with them, in their memories, in their hearts. This confused her. This fascinated her. This frightened her. The danger of humanity. The exchange was ending. Grant could feel himself being pulled back into his own mind, the connection fading. But before it was gone completely, he felt something else from Vecteri. A realization. Humanity was unlike any species she had encountered. They were not just strong, not just intelligent. They were unpredictable. The Jurek, for all their power, followed logic and instinct. Their unity made them powerful, but also rigid. They could not truly change. But humans could evolve. They could break their own rules, rewrite their own history, turn weakness into strength. That made them dangerous, and for the first time in her long reign, Vecteri did not know if she should fear them or admire them. The return. Grant gasped as he was pulled back into his body. The chamber's glow faded, and the connection was severed. He staggered, gripping the edge of the pod for support. His mind was spinning, still struggling to separate his thoughts from the remnants of the hive's memories. Across from him, Queen Vecteri sat motionless. For the first time since he had arrived, the Jurek queen looked uncertain. The watching nobles whispered among themselves, sensing the shift in their queen. Finally, after a long silence, Vecteri spoke. "You are truly unlike any species I have known, Commander Grant." Grant straightened, still catching his breath. "And you, Your Majesty, have a mind unlike anything I have ever experienced." Vecteri's eyes glowed softly. "You are not connected as we are, yet you are not weak. You carry your pain, your victories, your losses. You adapt." She paused. Then, in a softer voice, she added, "That is both admirable and dangerous." Grant studied her carefully. "Does this change your opinion of humanity?" Vecteri was silent for a long time. Then she did something none of the nobles expected. She bowed her head, just slightly, but enough to send a ripple of shock through the chamber. "I have much to consider," she said, "but one thing is clear." Her 6 glowing eyes met his. "Humanity will shape the future of this galaxy, for better or worse." Commander Elias Grant stood tall, his mind still reeling from the neural exchange with Queen Vecteri. He could still feel echoes of the hive's presence, thousands of voices, memories that were not his own. But the connection was gone now, leaving him alone with his thoughts. Across from him, Queen Vecteri remained still, her 6 glowing eyes locked onto his. The chamber was silent, the watching nobles too stunned to speak. Never before had their queen bowed her head to an outsider. Finally, Vecteri straightened. "You have shown me much, Commander Grant. More than I expected." Grant nodded. "And you've shown me the strength of the Jirak. This exchange has helped us understand each other." A faint hum came from Vecteri. "Yes. And yet, understanding is not the same as trust." Grant didn't flinch. He had expected this. Trust was never given easily, especially not between 2 powerful species. Before he could respond, a sharp voice interrupted. This meeting was a mistake. Grant turned his head. It was Minister Kozor, the noble who had spoken against him earlier. He stepped forward, his dark blue exoskeleton gleaming under the golden light. His mandibles clicked sharply as he addressed the Queen. "Your Majesty, the human has infected your thoughts with chaos," Kozor said. "He is dangerous." "They all are. We must not allow them to manipulate us." Vecteri's crest pulsed faintly. "You doubt my judgment, Kozor." Kozor bowed slightly. "I question only the risk, my queen. The human mind is unpredictable. You yourself admitted this. They are not like us." Grant exhaled slowly. He had seen this before, fear disguised as caution. He took a step forward. "Minister Kozor, humanity does not seek to manipulate your queen. We seek diplomacy, cooperation." Kozor's mandibles twitched. "Diplomacy is a tool of the weak. We have survived for thousands of years without allies. We do not need humans." Vecteri studied Kozor carefully. "And yet, here you stand, fearing them." Kozor stiffened. "I do not fear them. I respect the danger they represent, and I do not wish to see our hive destroyed because of misplaced curiosity." Grant narrowed his eyes. This wasn't just about politics. Kozor saw humans as a threat, and threats were meant to be eliminated. A deadly plan. As the meeting ended, Grant was escorted to his guest chambers within the hive's royal complex. The walls pulsed with soft bioluminescence, the air warm and thick with the scent of Jirak pheromones. He sat on the organic-looking chair, rubbing his temples. The neural exchange had drained him, but he couldn't rest. Something felt wrong. Kozor wouldn't just accept this. A soft buzzing sound caught his attention. Grant turned toward the ventilation shaft. A small Jirak drone crawled out, its tiny eyes glowing faintly. It chirped once, scanning the room before stepping forward. Then, to his surprise, it spoke. "Commander Grant, you are in danger." Grant's muscles tensed. "Who are you?" The drone's voice was soft, barely above a whisper. "I am Lurki, a scholar of the hive. I study foreign species. I have been watching Minister Kozor, and I believe he intends to kill you." Grant's jaw tightened. So, he had been right. Kozor wouldn't let this meeting end peacefully. "How?" he asked. "The Jirak do not assassinate openly," Lurki said. "Kozor will make it look like an accident, a malfunction in your quarters, a miscommunication that leads to your ship being destroyed as it leaves. He will ensure you never let Ave Jirak Prime alive." Grant's pulse quickened. He was alone on an alien world, surrounded by a species that barely trusted him. If Kozor wanted him dead, there would be few who would question it. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked. Lurki hesitated. Then, in a softer voice, it said, "Because I believe the Queen was right to seek knowledge, and I do not wish to see a war between our people. Grant nodded slowly. Then we need to act fast. A race against time. Grant knew he had to reach Queen Vecteri. If he could warn her, she might be able to stop Khazur. Moving carefully, he left his chambers and stepped into the dimly lit corridor. The walls pulsed faintly, the hive's living structure responding to his presence. Lurky crawled along the ceiling, guiding him through a hidden pathway, one that Khazur's forces wouldn't expect him to take. But as they neared the Queen's chamber, Grant heard something that made his blood run cold. Voices. Khazur was already there. Peering around the corner, Grant saw the noble standing before Vecteri, his posture tense. Several Jurek guards stood behind him, their bladed arms gleaming. It was a coup. "You have been deceived, my queen," Khazur was saying. "The human seeks to weaken you, to break the unity of the hive." Vecteri's crest flickered. "And so you believe killing him will protect us?" Khazur's mandibles twitched. Yes. Grant knew he couldn't wait any longer. Stepping forward, he made his presence known. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice steady, "Khazur is not acting to protect you. He is acting to protect his own power." The chamber fell silent. Khazur turned sharply, his glowing eyes narrowing. "You should not be here, human." Grant stood his ground. "And yet, here I am. I wonder why that bothers you so much." Vecteri looked between them, her mind working quickly. Then, in a cold voice, she said, "Khazur, you seek to silence knowledge, to eliminate what you fear." Khazur's mandibles clenched. "I seek to protect the hive." Vecteri's eyes burned with golden light. "No, you seek to control it." The guards hesitated. They were unsure now. The Queen's authority was absolute, but Khazur had planted fear in them. Grant knew this moment was critical. "The future of the hive is not in fear," he said, looking at the guards. "It is in understanding. The Queen saw into my mind. She knows what humanity is capable of. And she still believes in peace." For a long moment, no one moved. Then, finally, Vecteri made her decision. "You have overstepped, Khazur," she said. "You will answer for this." Khazur's eyes widened. He knew what that meant. Punishment. Exile. Or worse. But before the guards could seize him, he did something no one expected. With a sudden, sharp movement, he activated a device on his wrist, and the hive's alarms began to blare. The hive's alarms screamed through the chamber, filling the air with a deep, pulsing sound. The walls of the hive, usually calm and glowing softly, now flickered in shades of red and orange. Something was very wrong. Commander Elias Grant's muscles tensed as he turned toward Khazur, who stood defiant before Queen Vecteri. The noble's mandibles twitched with triumph, his clawed fingers still hovering over the activation device on his wrist. "You forced my hand, my queen," Khazur said. "But it is not too late. Stop resisting, and let us remove this human before he destroys everything." Vecteri's 6 glowing eyes burned with fury. "You are a fool, Khazur. You do not see the path you are walking." Grant took a step forward. "What did you do?" Khazur's mandibles curled in something close to a smirk. "I have sent a distress signal across the hive. My loyalists will come, and they will purge this corruption." Grant clenched his fists. Khazur had planned for this. If enough of his supporters arrived, Vecteri would be forced to surrender, or worse. The Jurek guards in the chamber hesitated, uncertain. Some still stood by their queen, but others glanced toward Khazur, their loyalty shaken. The hive was splitting. Vecteri straightened. Her crest flared with golden light, her mind reaching across the vast network of the hive. She was calling her own loyalists. But Grant knew they had little time. If Khazur's forces arrived first, this would turn into a civil war. Escape from the throne chamber. Grant turned to Lurky, the small scholar drone who had warned him earlier. "We need to move. Now." Lurky chirped in agreement. "There is a hidden passageway behind the Queen's throne. It will leave us to the lower chambers. Vecteri's eyes flickered with understanding. Good. We will use it. Kazur's mandibles snapped in frustration. You will not escape. He lunged forward. But Grant was ready. He sidestepped and slammed his elbow into Kazur's side, knocking him back. The Jirak noble hissed in pain but recovered quickly. He was fast. Too fast. The guards reacted. Some rushed toward Grant and the Queen, while others turned on each other. The chamber erupted into chaos. Grant didn't wait. He grabbed Vecteri's arm and pulled her toward the hidden door. Lyrki scuttled ahead, activating the panel. The wall slid open with a low hum, revealing a dark, narrow tunnel. In here, Grant ordered. Vecteri hesitated only for a moment before stepping through. Lyrki followed. Grant was about to step inside, when Kazur lunged again. This time, his bladed arm aimed directly for Grant's chest. Grant barely dodged, feeling the sharp edge slice through his jacket. He gritted his teeth and lashed out with a quick punch to Kazur's mandibles, making the noble stumble. Then, without wasting another second, Grant jumped into the tunnel, and Lyrki sealed the door behind him. The hive below. The tunnel was damp and strangely warm, the walls pulsing faintly with soft blue light. The air smelled thick with Jirak pheromones, a mix of tension and fear spreading through the hive's network. Vecteri walked beside Grant, her tall, slender form moving gracefully despite the urgency. This is worse than I expected, she murmured. Kazur is more dangerous than I thought. Grant exhaled. Yeah. And now we have to stop him before he takes full control. Lyrki scuttled ahead, guiding them deeper into the tunnels. We must reach the hive nexus. It is the heart of the hive's communication system. If the Queen can access it, she can override Kazur's signal and call for reinforcements. Grant nodded. Then let's move fast. He won't waste time hunting us. But before they could take another step, the tunnel walls shuddered. A deep rumbling noise echoed through the passage, followed by a distant roar, the unmistakable sound of an explosion. Grant's heart pounded. What was that? Vecteri closed her eyes for a moment, her mind reaching through the hive's network. When she opened them again, her expression was grim. Kazur's forces have breached the Queen's chamber. They are destroying the paths leading to the upper levels. He is trying to trap us down here. Grant cursed under his breath. Kazur was cutting off their escape. They had no choice now. We need to get to that nexus, Grant said. Now. Vecteri nodded. Agreed. And they ran. A dangerous path. The tunnels twisted and turned, the organic walls shifting slightly as if alive. The hive was constantly growing, changing, and adapting, just like its people. Lyrki guided them through narrow corridors, past bioluminescent roots that pulsed with strange energy. Every now and then, Vecteri would stop and listen, sensing the movements of her people through the hive's shared mind. Then, suddenly, she froze. Something is wrong, she whispered. Grant felt it too. The air had changed. It was too quiet. Lyrki's small body trembled. They are here. Before Grant could react, the walls ahead of them split open, and Kazur's warriors emerged. Tall, armored Jirak soldiers blocked their path, their sharp limbs gleaming under the blue light. Their eyes burned with a fanatical glow. They had been waiting. Grant's pulse quickened. This was a trap. Kazur's forces were already spreading through the hive. If they didn't fight their way through now, they would never reach the nexus. Vecteri's crest flared with determination. She stepped forward, her presence commanding. You stand against your queen, she said. You betray the hive's future. One of the soldiers hesitated, but the others did not. With a loud hiss, they charged. Grant had no time to think. He raised his weapon. The battle had begun. The battle in the tunnels had erupted faster than Grant could have imagined. The Jirak soldiers moved with precision, their sharp limbs aimed at the intruders, Vecteri, Grant, and Lyrki. The air hummed with tension as the guards rushed forward, their eyes glowing with fanatical loyalty to Khazor. Grant didn't hesitate. His hand gripped the blaster tightly, firing quick bursts at the oncoming soldiers. The weapon's energy blasts hit their targets with a sharp crack, but the Zhurek armor absorbed most of the shots. "Fall back," Grant shouted, grabbing Vecteri by the arm. "We need to get to the Nexus." Vecteri's eyes burned with golden intensity as she took her place beside him. Her energy pulses rippled out from her form, pushing the guards back with shockwaves. It was a display of power, but it was clear that the Zhurek soldiers were relentless. Khazur's forces were closing in from every direction. The walls of the hive seemed to move and shift, trapping them. But they couldn't stop. The Nexus was their only hope. A desperate run. Lyrki led the way, its small legs skittering over the uneven surface of the hive's underground labyrinth. Its tiny body was quick, darting through the narrow corridors as if it knew the hive better than anyone. "Stay close," Lyrki called back, its voice echoing through the tunnels. "The Nexus is near. We must hurry." Grant and Vecteri followed closely behind, their steps quick but deliberate. Behind them, the soldiers were relentless. They would not stop until they had captured or killed the queen and her human companion. Vecteri's eyes constantly scanned the walls of the hive. Khazor will not stop. He wants control. He believes the hive belongs to him. Grant glanced at her, realizing just how far the Zhurek civil war had gone. "I know. But if we can reach the Nexus, we might be able to turn this around." The sound of footsteps and voices grew louder. Khazur's soldiers were gaining ground. Lyrki led them into another chamber. This one was vast, with a towering structure at its center. An organic mass of interwoven bioluminescent roots and pulsing energy nodes. It was the heart of the hive, the place where all communications and control began. The Nexus. Grant could see the way the walls hummed with power. The energy here was alive, buzzing in the air, the very essence of the Zhurek. This was the nerve center of the hive. If Vecteri could tap into its power, she could override Khazur's command. "Let's move quickly," Grant urged. "We don't have much time." The final confrontation. They were just a few steps away from the Nexus when Khazur's voice echoed from behind them. "Stop right there, Queen." Grant turned, his pulse rising. Khazur was standing at the entrance, his armored body towering over the others. He was flanked by his loyal soldiers, their eyes flashing with hunger for a fight. "I won't let you destroy everything we've worked for," Khazur shouted, his mandibles clicking with rage. "This hive is mine." Vecteri stepped forward, her body glowing with power. "This hive belongs to no one," she said, her voice calm but full of authority. "It belongs to the Zhurek people, and they will choose their future." Khazur's eyes narrowed. "Not if I have anything to say about it." With a sharp motion, he raised his arm, signaling the attack. The Zhurek soldiers surged forward, but this time, Vecteri was ready. Her energy pulses flared as she sent out a powerful shockwave, throwing several soldiers back. The air crackled with the force of the blast. It was like a living storm had been unleashed. "Get to the Nexus," Grant shouted, firing his weapon at the oncoming soldiers. He wasn't sure how much longer they could hold them off, but he had to trust Vecteri. Vecteri nodded, her eyes glowing with determination. She moved toward the center of the Nexus, her mind reaching out. The energy nodes responded to her presence, pulsing brighter, as if they were alive. Control of the hive. Grant watched as Vecteri's form blurred with golden light. She was no longer just the queen. She was one with the hive, her mind connected to the core of the Nexus. The Nexus hummed louder, the walls vibrating as Vecteri took control. Energy surged through the chamber, crackling in the air. The walls shifted, closing off the path Khazur's forces were coming through. Khazur roared in fury as the chamber doors slammed shut before his soldiers could reach them. His followers, momentarily stunned, hesitated. Vecteri turned to face him. Her eyes were filled with power. "You have lost, Khazur, she said coldly. The hive will not follow a tyrant. Khazur's mandibles twitched, his gaze shifting from Vektari to Grant. You, human, you think you've won. This hive will always follow strength, and I am strength. Vektari stepped forward, her voice unwavering. Strength does not come from fear, Khazur. It comes from unity. And the hive will choose unity, or it will perish. The tension in the air was thick. Khazur was defeated, but his pride wouldn't let him accept it. Grant raised his weapon, his voice steady. It's over, Khazur. Khazur glared, but the fire in his eyes dimmed. Slowly, he lowered his arm. This is not the end, he said through clenched mandibles. You may have won this battle, but the hive will never be the same. With that, Khazur turned and retreated into the shadows, his soldiers following him. The hive was silent once more. A new beginning. Grant exhaled slowly, his heart still pounding. The battle was over, but the war for the future of the Jurak had only just begun. Vektari stepped away from the Nexus, her glowing eyes now calm but full of wisdom. She looked at Grant. You have helped me see the truth, Commander Grant. The Jurak cannot remain isolated forever. We must change, and I will lead them into a new future. Grant nodded. It won't be easy, but it's a start. Lirki, who had remained silent during the confrontation, finally spoke. The hive is not just a place. It is a symbol of the Jurak, and now it is a symbol of what we can become. Grant smiled, feeling the weight of the moment. They had won. For now. But he knew that the future of the Jurak, and humanity's place in it, would not be easy. But it was possible. Vektari looked at the now still Nexus. Together, we will rebuild. Grant met her gaze, feeling the weight of her words. Together, he agreed. The hive was still. For the first time in what felt like forever, there was peace. Queen Vektari stood in the center of the Nexus, the heart of the hive, her eyes glowing with a soft golden light. She had claimed victory, but the war was not over. The path ahead was uncertain, and the Jurak needed a leader who could guide them into a new future. Grant stood beside her, his hand resting lightly on his weapon, but his gaze was fixed on Vektari. He had seen her strength in battle, but now he saw the weight of leadership in her eyes. Her people were looking to her for a new beginning, and the challenges she faced would be unlike any battle she had ever fought before. Where do we go from here? Grant asked, his voice steady, but filled with curiosity. Vektari took a deep breath, her eyes still focused on the glowing energy nodes around them. The hive seemed alive, its hum a constant reminder of the delicate balance that had been shattered only hours ago. We rebuild, she said, her voice calm but filled with determination. We heal the divisions. The Jurak have suffered long enough under the weight of old traditions and corruption. It is time for change. Grant nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. And what about the humans? Where do we fit into all this? Vektari turned to him, her 6 eyes meeting his gaze. For a moment, they stood in silence, the tension of the past few weeks hanging in the air. Finally, she spoke. The Jurak and humans share a bond now, whether we like it or not. Your people fought for us, helped us defeat Khazur, and you helped me see the truth about the future. I will not forget that. Grant smiled slightly, though his expression remained serious. We're allies now, not just strangers thrown together by circumstance. We'll help you rebuild. It's the least we can do. Vektari's mandibles twitched in what might have been a smile. Yes, together, we can achieve more than we ever could alone. The Council of Change. The next few days were a whirlwind. Word spread quickly that Queen Vektari had regained control of the hive and Khazur's followers had been defeated. But even with the victory, there was much work to be done. Vektari called together a council of leaders, Jurak from all the hive's various colonies, to discuss the future of their people. Grant had never been a part of something like this before. As a human, he had been invited as an observer, but he felt the weight of his presence there. The Jirac were not just welcoming him, they were asking for his help. The council chamber was vast, an open space surrounded by tall, shimmering columns of living matter that glowed softly in the dark. Jirac representatives from different factions gathered, each wearing their ceremonial armor, their mandibles clicking softly as they exchanged quiet words. Vecteri stood at the head of the chamber, her presence commanding attention as she called for silence. I have gathered you here today, not just as your queen, but as one of you. We stand on the edge of a new era, one where we can no longer cling to old ways that have kept us divided. The room was quiet. Even the most powerful leaders of the hive seemed to be waiting for her next words. Khazar's rebellion is over, but there will be others who wish to keep the hive in the past. We must unite if we are to move forward. One of the elder Jirac spoke up, his voice gravelly with age. And how do you propose we unite, Queen? The divisions between our factions run deep. Can you truly expect us to set aside our differences? Vecteri's golden eyes flashed with determination. I do not expect it to be easy, but I will not lead from fear or division. I will lead with vision, and I will lead with the truth. She turned to the council members. We must learn from the humans. They are an example of what unity can accomplish. We must work together, regardless of our past. Grant had been silent, but now he stepped forward. Vecteri is right. Humans have made their share of mistakes. We've fought wars, broken alliances, and torn ourselves apart. But through it all, we've learned the value of working together. It's not about erasing the past. It's about moving forward, building something better. The room was still for a moment. Then, one by one, the council members nodded. A time for healing. In the days that followed, Grant worked alongside Vecteri and Lurky to help the Jirac rebuild. It was slow at first. Trust between the factions had been broken, and it would take time to repair the damage that had been done. But even in the darkest corners of the hive, change was beginning to take root. The Jirac were a proud species, but they were not blind. They could see that their future depended on unity, and in this new era, they would either embrace cooperation or face extinction. Grant spent much of his time traveling between the various Jirac colonies, meeting with their leaders and listening to their concerns. He became a bridge between humans and Jirac, a symbol of what could be accomplished when two species came together in the spirit of peace. Vecteri, too, was hard at work. She spent hours in the Nexus, overseeing the repairs to the hive's communication network and working with her council to establish new systems of governance. She no longer held the title of queen alone. She was now the leader of a people who were ready to evolve, to look beyond their old ways and into a brighter future. A new alliance. It wasn't long before the first joint missions between humans and Jirac began. Human ships, outfitted with Jirac technology, traveled across the stars, seeking new allies and trading partners. The Jirac, with their sharp minds and advanced engineering skills, were eager to learn from humanity's scientific advancements. Grant knew that the future wasn't guaranteed. There would be challenges, old wounds to heal, and new threats on the horizon. But for the first time, he felt that the alliance between the Jirac and humans was built on something real, something worth protecting. The sun was setting as Grant and Vecteri stood together, looking out over the hive. The golden light from the setting star bathed the chamber in a soft glow, and for a moment, it felt like everything was possible. Vecteri turned to Grant, her voice quiet but filled with certainty. We have come so far, but this is only the beginning. Grant nodded. The future is ours to build. And together, they would build it, side by side, for the Jirac, for humanity, and for the galaxy they would soon share.